Hi, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to NABIG Conference, Congress today. We're here at the Micropilots Grassroots-led Direct Cash Demonstration session. My name is Kimberly Woods, and I'll be monitoring this today. Before we start, I want to give a brief overview on how Crowdcast works. So if you would like to submit a question, wander on down to the bottom and do so in the Ask a Question section. You may also vote on the questions already submitted by other attendees. This will help us determine which questions to prioritize. Next, there's also a chat function on your right, and you can hold side conversations, connect with other individuals here. I encourage you all to go in there right now and say hello to everyone and tell us where you're from, and anything about why you love basic income. I love sharing those kinds of things. So interact with each other. We encourage that. And in order to keep things moving, we might not be able to get around to responding to that activity in there specifically, which is why we encourage your questions to land in the Q&A section. So please help us with doing that. Next, I want to introduce our wonderful speakers here. We have Sylvester. Sylvester Ani Jr. was born in Inglewood, California, and was raised in Citrus. He later went on to earn his degree in psychology at Azusa. Did I say that right, Sylvester?
Azusa
Pacific University. I love that. Currently serves as a full-time caregiver for people within the autism community. He founded a nonprofit organization, The Love We Don't See, and they are on a mission to highlight the love in the Los Angeles area and are committed towards investing in marginalized communities to promote education and upward economic mobility. He currently is also a congressional candidate in California's 38th district. Woo! All right, so next we also have Anna Young here today. She runs a community-led basic income project. Anna grew up in Maplewood, New Jersey, and currently lives in Sunnyside, Queens, New York. She serves as a middle school special educator at KIPP NYC Public Schools and studied political theory at McGill University. Her thinking around UBI was originally inspired by Andrew Yang's presidential campaign, the writings of Dr. Martin Luther King, the Stockton, California Basic Income Pilot under Mayor Michael Tubbs, as well as the many incredible mutual aid programs around the world. The idea for this specific project she will talk about today came last spring while quarantining with her family at home. In Essex County, it's unique in that it's dense and racially diverse urban-suburban area. The tools to combat race-based poverty all exist within a 10-mile radius. While the political institutions may fail their communities, families, and neighbors, they have the power to ensure the health of these communities. And I love the quote that you've shared with us here. Your mom, I bet she's in the audience today. And she says here, you say here that while she often said while doing dishes, community service begins at home.
Yes. Famous Deborah Young quote.
I love it. I love it. So on that note, let's dive into a couple of questions about your basic income demonstrations. So I'd love for you guys to tell us a little bit about your journey to start your basic income pilots. Anna, would you like to start?
Sure. And thank you so much, Sil. Great to meet you. And Kimberly, it's always a pleasure. So I started, you read the whole description. I live in New York, but I went back home to Essex County, New Jersey. I lived with my family during quarantine. And it was a moment of crisis where we were just being utterly failed by the government. And it was, I was already very much aware of income inequality in the community in which I grew up in. But to be in that extreme situation in which we are really in lockdown and people are sort of secluding and isolating to their families and to their homes, and we are turning our backs on our neighbors. These are communities where people, there's highs and lows, right? And it seemed just it was just really devastating to see how Black and brown marginalized communities that exist within, like I said, a 10-minute radius of very wealthy communities were just being left behind. And so I had already been like very invested, I guess like more like intellectually in learning about UBI, and it's sort of like the puzzle pieces came together. And I just really did it as almost like a test run. I was like, I think this will work. And I partnered with a neighborhood food pantry, and it just came together really, really fast. There were two parts. One, there's just a great need. The community organization was already in the organization for decades, so we were choosing an organization which was already present. I wasn't creating anything. And the second thing is that UBI works. So there's not a lot to do, right? It's people's lives, giving them the resources that they need to make the best decisions for themselves. And that's one of the reasons the project was so successful so quickly.
It's wonderful. And like I really admire you and your drive to just pick up and just do something that you knew that you could make a difference. And that is at the heart of what is amazing. It's at the heart what is amazing about these smaller pilots going on here. He's not disappeared. It looks like he's toggled his video. We can still hear him, I do believe. Sylvester, are you there? There you are. Wonderful. So the question goes to you now. Tell us about your journey to start your basic income pilot.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me personally, I like to say that universal basic income found me. I didn't find it. You know, like Anna was talking about with this past year during the pandemic, where we were shut down, people were, forced inside of their homes, not to their own fault. We were in a pandemic. And when I saw that the government was quarreling whether or not to give stimulus checks to people at a time where people are suffering economic anxiety, people have lost their jobs, people have lost their businesses. And at that point, we had only got one $1,200 check. And this is supposed to be the richest nation on the planet. And all we could do for our citizens during a lockdown was give them one $1,200 check. And that's why I go back to Dr. King's quote where he said, no nation can call itself rich, as long as poverty is a key thing that is holding so many people down from economic freedom. And for me, it was an opportunity to educate myself more about what a guaranteed income, a universal basic income could do for the lives of people. And once I got connected with the income movement, which I'm blessed to be a part of now, I learned how much attacking poverty at its root is not a new conversation. And also in the way that Dr. King talked about it, that there isn't anything new about poverty, but what is new is that we have the techniques and the resources to combat it. And that's what universal basic income does at its core, is that it starts to itch away at the root of poverty and invest in people versus investing in war, investing in big corporations, because at the end of the day, we need each other. And if we aren't taking a serious investment into each other, then we're poor, not just economically, but we're poor, like morally speaking as well. So I think that this is just as much of it as it is an economic boost. It's also a moral boost. And it says a lot about us as a nation if we don't invest in a universal basic income.
Yeah, we have the power. It's a choice, this poverty crisis that we're in, and you guys are doing the hard work to demonstrate that it works 100% at every level and every type of pilot. So let's dive into some of the more specifics. What is the scope and duration of your demonstration or pilot, as we call them? Either one of you can go first.
Anna, I just spoke, so I'll let you go ahead.
So it started out really small. It's still pretty small, but we started out, I was like, let's do this for 3 months, with my own money, and a couple friends, and focusing just on like one woman. And it quickly multiplied to 2 clients for 24 months. So yeah, that's still in the demonstration phase. And then hopefully after the 24-month period, we'll be able to expand it. One of the biggest challenges we're having we can get to the challenge phase, but so many, the partner organization we have is still like, people think things are opening up, the economy is recovering, but the communities that we work in, they're not going to recover for years, and then it's just returning back to pre-COVID levels of like 24% poverty rate, right? So our sense of recovery is just is no material to it.
Yeah.
And so the food banks, the organizations that are on the ground are just so overwhelmed. So hopefully it's a long-term horizon. We'll say that we're like really just trying to also get through the years that it will take after for basic recovery, and then start thinking like, okay, how can we expand the program long term?
Yeah. And so you mentioned it's 24 months for 2 people now, 2 families. How much are you awarding each month?
It's about 300 in cash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
So it's all small donations. Yeah.
And so it's just very crowdsourced. Like you said, your friends, your family are participating to help fund this and make it possible. It's really, really beautiful. It really does take a community of homes to help others in their homes. I love that. All right, Sylvester, what's the scope and duration of your pilot?
Well, yeah, so the scope of my pilot, now while I am running for Congress, the work with our universal basic income pilot was done with my nonprofit, The Love We Don't See. And we received a grant from Drew and Lauren Holiday. They have a JLH fund, which they were supporting Black and brown businesses during the pandemic, and nonprofits as well, for the work that they were doing in the community. And we were blessed to be recognized by them. And at the time when we received our grant, that's when the government was going back and forth whether or not we would get a $600 check after the one-time $1,200 check that we received. So we thought that it would not be, it would be best to use the blessing that we got from them to bless other people, and also further the discussion about a universal basic income, and how the stimulus should not be something that is just in the moment, and it should be something that's reoccurring and is a fixture as a part of our society. So we were able to invest $10,000 in a 6-month pilot. Yes, so 10,000 in a 6-month pilot for 4 families, and each family received $400 a month with a $100 signing bonus initially for the first month. So it was $500 for the first month, $400 subsequently. And then what we also did too, applicants were able to use the money on whatever it is that they wanted to use the money on, but then we also gave resources in terms of financial educational tips, and then diet tips as well, because with COVID, we saw within the Black and brown communities, it exacerbated so many of the health conditions that our communities are going through, which are also exacerbated by our economic situation as well. So we wanted to make sure that we gave these families the resources and the tools to take advantage of this the most. And we are 5 months into the pilot, and the results are what you would expect. The quality of life has improved since the income has been introduced to their lives.
Wow, that's really excellent. And with a great donation from your wonderful benefactors, it's awesome that you're bringing the well-rounded experience to them with the other resources that you're providing with the health and the wellness advice and classes and all of that. I love that. It's amazing. And do they have an from what I understand, they have an opportunity to connect with each other, right, within your pilot?
Oh yes, because with our pilot, we definitely wanted it to be something where this wasn't charity, and that we were building relationships with the individuals that we had with the pilot. So we've gone mini golfing together. We've set them up with personal trainers where they've taken group virtual classes as well, just to really, again, harness that health and wealth, because it's key. And the other thing that's key as well is the access to the information, because so much is lost because these communities, our people, don't have that access and the resources and the support, and all that's tied within a universal basic income. And my story isn't something that should necessarily be lauded, in the sense of, when we have a government that has billions of dollars at its disposal, but then we have individuals like myself, like Anna, that are starting many pilots across the country doing the job that the government should be doing. This is where we're nearing a dystopian type of future, where our values and our priorities aren't where they should be. And it shouldn't take, for instance, in my situation, a 27-year-old to receive a grant from an NBA player to be able to help families out when we are the richest country in the world. So the hope is that with these pilots, that we can inspire and push the government to do what they should be doing, just in the same way that the Black Panthers did with the free health programs and Breakfast Club programs that they had during the civil rights movement.
I love that. I love that. And that's exactly what it is. You're demonstrating the power of basic income and what it's doing for the individuals that it's impacting, and building that community with them helps to mimic how basic income will really help a larger community, when they're talking about and sharing their resources and growing together with their new basic income. I love that. So next I want to move to a question around challenges. So what were the biggest hurdles or challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? Anna.
Well, I try to always have a solutions-oriented mindset, but I'm always like, oh, what's the problem? I already talked about the problems earlier. The biggest thing was not being able to talk about the project publicly. So because our partner organization was so overwhelmed with like the amazing work that they do every day, things sort of had to be done like, a little under the table situation, so I wasn't allowed to like write op-eds. I'm not allowed to use their name, just because they really just need breathing space to build the infrastructure for the program, which is, one of the challenges, but also it's a sign of working with like a real community organization that they're like doing the work every single day. However, one of the things that I found about UBI that ends up being really gorgeous is the storytelling aspect, right? Because like Sly was saying, you end up with relationships that build over a long period of time, right? And being connected to individuals and ending up with a network. So I was able to sort of build my own network. I don't know a lot of the people who donate to the pilot. It started out with like my personal network, my friends, my family. And then those individuals then felt empowered to have conversations about basic income with others, right? Whether it was their aunt or their grandparent. So my initial hope was like, okay, I really want this to stay super local. I want it to be my neighbors. I want it to be people I grew up with. But the project in its nature ended up having sort of a ripple effect where people from like out of state were donating, or like, this is really cool. So it's a challenge, but it does a lot to the program itself, and how like impactful basic income is, that people feel like, oh, I really want to get other people involved in a way that, you know, I've worked in nonprofit for a while. I don't really see with like small donations in general.
Yeah.
I also, this is not related, but I just wanted to add that, like, I don't think it's a surprise that, like, we both work in education. We both work with kids with special needs. Like, you're in your bio, you work with kids with autism. I'm a special educator. And, you know, part of basic income, well, we don't really have to convince everybody on this call, right? We're all here already, but that every citizen really has value. And it also wasn't a surprise when the families that were chosen by the food pantry, they were selected, had kids with special needs. And anyway, I just wanted to add that because I was like, I feel like that's a separate conversation.
No, but it's
Amongst
it's something of note for sure. And
Yeah.
it's something to be said for the individuals like yourself who are just having the initiative to just make it happen. And maybe that's in your nature as part of the makeup of why you chose what you do, and why you do it. It's part of the whole package. And I love that. So you're making a difference in the world, and that is definitely admirable and commendable and amazing. We are so blessed to have you a part of our community, making a difference within this movement. So Sylvester, the same question to you. What are the biggest hurdles and challenges you faced, and how are you overcoming them?
Yeah, and I just want to say the synergy is definitely there, and it goes back to our roots and the things that we do in our personal lives, and just the fact that, you know, human value. I mean, you have that value because you're breathing and you're living, you know, and then it starts there. And I think that if we can make more of an investment and understanding of human beings from that standpoint, we'd have a lot less issues now. But to your question, the more difficult things with the pilot was more so the structure, setting up the structure for the pilot, just because this is something I never had done before. So in, you know, the research in terms of like, what's the best way to do it? How many months should it be? How much is enough to be impactful to a family? What questions should you ask in a survey? How it is that you relay this information to city government and officials about how this would be an impact and a benefit to the community. That was where, for me, a lot of the difficulty was. I mean, once we got because the thing is, once the money was an issue that was settled, and obviously the heart is in there to do it. Now it's just the structure and making sure that everything is copacetic, and that you're going to put out the most impactful pilot for people. So for me personally, it was just a structure, but I had good people at the income movement who were able and Level Up California as well, that were able to assist in the structure of the pilot, and they made sure that we could do everything that we needed to do.
Bringing together all the minds within the community is really powerful. Yeah. And can open doors. I understand that you're able to work with Steady in order to bring the money to your clients.
Yes, and that was amazing too. Thank you for adding that. That was amazing too. Steady worked with David Kim, another congressional candidate from the last cycle, with the guaranteed income pilot within his district. And what Steady does as well, not only are they get into the basic income space, but they also help families and individuals with work as well. So it was a great opportunity in terms of a partnership, because not only were they dispersing the funds for us, for the families directly, they also helped us and assisted us with testimonial videos for the families, again, as we continue to advocate for this. And then with the economic insecurity that happened because people did lose their jobs, they were also able to, provide relief there if needed. So they're just, Steady is an all around great platform. And I couldn't have done it without the help from the people at Income Movement, Level Up California, Steady, Drew and Lauren Holiday. Again, it takes a community, it takes a village. So it's all encompassing.
Yep. All right, on to the next question. And I encourage all of you in the audience to add some questions to the Q&A down at the bottom of your screen. There's a little ask a question button. Please do submit questions, upvote other people's questions, and we'll have some time to ask some of those in just a few more minutes. All right, so next question is, what are some of the key things that you learned going through the pilot process? So what are you learning personally, or have you learned through the process of building the pilot, around the pilot? Either of those aspects or another aspect angle would work too. We'd love to hear.
I guess just to have faith in myself. That sounds really cheesy, but like when I started it, and UBI is still, I think, pretty unfamiliar to a lot of Americans, and just kind of like that idea of valuing people, period, right, is just an unfamiliar idea in our communities, which is really unfortunate. And I think that when I was first doing it, I felt like it was kind of like I was just talking. I was like, I've read all these books about it. This is the idea. This is what we're trying to do. This is like the community that we're working in. And I kind of felt like I was like talking to myself. But like as you continue having those conversations and finding like the right people and the right partner organizations, you kind of end up in like a much more positive space and working with people that I never would have expected, and it was just such a pleasant and just beautiful surprise how the whole project landed. And even, how I came to meet all the folks at Income Movement was just like it just felt really special. And I was like, oh, I really get these people. I am so happy to be part of this community. Everyone I meet is awesome. And sometimes when you have an idea that's like a little bit outside of the normal discourse, you got to work a little harder, right? But like once you can kind of click with others who are pushing that agenda forward, it ends up it's been really smooth lately. And I just appreciate everything you guys have given.
Yeah. And I got to say, huge shout out to Hannah, the organizer of NABIG, the project manager here, for bringing, like, there were some connections going on there from her to you to Income Movement to all the space. So it's fun to find each other out in the world and bring people into the parts of the community that you've not been in yet. So Sylvester, the question to you, what are some of the key things you learned going through the pilot process and setting it up, either about yourself, about the process, about your community?
Yes, for me personally, I think one thing that I learned or I just have a better understanding of now is how deep the issue of poverty is in this country. One of the individuals that was in the pilot was in a situation where, in being in the lines for food lines with the cars, and that's how we were doing everything because of COVID, they had to decide between which lines they could be in, because if they stayed in a line that was too long, they had to worry about their gas running out. With kids in the car, it's hot, and you can't even go get food because you won't have enough gas by the time you get to the front of it. And these are the questions that, again, in the richest nation in the world, that parents are having to ask themselves if they can stay in a line or not, because they might not have gas by the end of it. Dealing with families, recently I was talking with families where they're telling their children, hey, listen, or they told their children, hey, if you go to school, you get your degree, you save enough money, by this time you'll be able to put some money down on a house. not being able to do that. What you promised your kids they'd be able to do if they did all the right things, were not able to fulfill those promises. And that again goes to my greater understanding of how deep this issue of poverty is, and even deeper than that, the amount of greed that we do have in this world, because it's not because of a lack of resources that we don't have people's needs met. It's because of the resources being hoarded and not equally distributed enough, why we're having these issues that we're having today. And I mean, it all goes along with, what Dr. King did was starting with his Poor People's Campaign, which is going to be the next leg of the civil rights movement. Was now that we had more civil rights, we were going for more economic inclusion. And ultimately, I think that's what ended up costing him his life. And I think that it's our duty to continue that mission on. And personally, it's a commitment that I'm making within my life to see all the way through.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think King was an inspiration for so many of us, and helping to uphold his legacy is definitely an honor that we get to have. All right, we've got a couple of really great questions from our audience. The first one I'd like to start with is just fun, kind of basics around the fundamentals and how it functioned. Did the funders for these projects come to you, or did you approach them? Anna.
Oh, so yeah, I approached everybody. I was like calling everybody, emailing everybody.
Friends, family, mom, dad.
all that. Like lots of like long conversations, 1 hour, 2 hours. And, the payoff ends up being that it's the long run of the project, right? And we did very different things, Sylvester and I. For me, it was also important that people see that you can be a teacher. You can, with only like $30 extra a month, right? But the multiplier effect makes it a really significant amount. $30 times 24 months is huge. So those conversations end up just being really big investments that have held up the project.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that you were able to, in those conversations, really help those individuals learn more about this concept of basic income. Maybe it was something that they hadn't thought about or delved deep into or really understood a lot.
Yeah. And we had very different, I feel like, Sylvester, I'm learning so much from you. When I did the project initially, this is probably something I would do differently, and maybe not differently. There's always a tension, right, between wanting to be really public about how amazing this is and also maintain the privacy of the clients. So when I set out, I was like, I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm not even going to know their names. This is like your life. Take this money. You don't have to have a relationship with me. This is not, I don't want like me to be a factor in your decision making. So the result of that is like a lack of narratives. And I've received like a lot of like beautiful cards and messages over the course. But it's been hard to tell that story without the information. So there's a tension, right? And they're both really important. And so I'd be interested in getting in touch later about like how to, tell the story and see the impact on the personal level while maintaining the privacy of clients. We can talk offline.
Right. Yes. And you're connected now. So you can, have that virtual coffee.
Yeah.
All right. So Sylvester, to you, the question is, did the funders of the project come to you, or did you approach them?
Definitely went to them. If we just had people coming to us offering money so we could do things, and
life would be grand, right?
Income, So I was definitely, I went to Drew and Lauren, and again, initially, that was a blessing, just because What created that opportunity was the pandemic and the fact that at the time, Drew's wife, Lauren, she had a bout with cancer and he was sitting out the bubble because of that and because of the precautions and not knowing how COVID would affect that. And he donated the rest of his salary, which opened up the opportunity for me to receive a grant in the first place for the pilot. And I just, again, I appreciate your acknowledgement. And I'm telling you, I was right there with you in terms of initially when I wanted to do it, I didn't want to ask any questions. I just wanted to get the money and then boom, that would just be it. But the thing, what I learned is it's not necessarily just for you to have that information, but then it's also so that you're able to help the next person and be able to tell that story. And that's what, you know, people like Stacey Rutland and more people at Income Movement were, you know, getting to me is that it's bigger than just this one pilot. You're joining a bigger movement and being able to convey these stories to the masses. It enables them to get educated about UBI and what it can do for people's lives.
And that's one of the things that these demonstrations serve is to help people understand more and more. They demonstrate the power, right? So one other question that's in the question and answer ask a question spot here, we've got how might you increase the size of your pilot?
Donations.
Yeah. So Sylvester, you've got a nonprofit. If you had donations coming, more donations coming your way, that would do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, until the government, you know, steps up and they do what they're supposed to do, then you know, I think it happens. It's on us. It's on the community to go ahead and make sure that this thing continues to live on. And when we hear things like the child tax credit is going to cut poverty in half, right?
Yeah.
That should be an alarm to everybody that, hey, listen, if there's a lever that you can just pull up and pull down in terms of how much poverty there is in the country, that's them telling you that poverty isn't, I mean, it's a policy choice. That's all poverty is. It's a policy choice. And it's about having that courage and political will to do what needs to be done for the least of these. And I think that's what says something about a great nation is how compassionate they are for those that can't contribute as much as others, and what they do to the least of, you know, of people in worse, you know, complicated situations. So, yeah. So, I mean, we can end poverty. It's not an issue, but until that happens with the government, I think that us coming together as a community and building and investing in each other applies more pressure for them to do their job.
Yeah. That's right. Anna, same answer. More money, huh? More donations, huh?
Yeah.
And that's great. It's the way that these pilots are functioning is that crowdsourced initiative.
But I would add also. Yes. Oh, sorry, Kimberly.
No, go ahead.
That, you know, part of the reason that I'm on, and I think maybe we could put this in the chat, is because something that we've been working on is that, you know, obviously I have my project, Sylvester has his project. There's so many other projects, right, going on. And we see that there is expansion, but perhaps like the most impactful growth is actually replication. So I'm going to start doing workshops on how to replicate this model in other communities. So that's kind of like the biggest point of growth, right? Is like if we can get lots of different people to do this and to take this on and show that, you know, it's actually not that hard. It's not that hard because it works. And that you do not need, you know, I think that one of the biggest things about UBI that can be potentially feel like an obstacle for a lot of people is how it is communicated through kind of an economic theory lens, right? And like in an ideal society, we'll all have what we need to survive, and we'll all, you know, and the way that we need to communicate it is just like we're working with families. We're giving people what they need. We're talking about cash relief. We're getting people money to, like Sylvester was saying, pay for gas. One of my families was in between homes, and they used the money to pay for a storage facility so they didn't lose all their stuff when they were in public housing, right? Because that sets you back even further. And just really bringing it to a very like concrete material understanding and communicating it along those lines, and showing people like you could literally be a school teacher doing this at night. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. That's what I'll say.
A couple spreadsheets, you know.
There's one
collecting
spreadsheet.
the first thing. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that you're displaying how this can be really a light lift if you want to make a difference in your community. And we all want to do that. And I think that's one of the reasons we're all here is, you know, we're advocating for something that will make a huge difference in our communities. So there's one other question I want to ask specifically of Sylvester, because I think it lends itself to you. So how do we approach elected reps who are interested in this topic? Maybe you can help this person here. She says she's in San Bernardino.
Well, I think the way that you approach these elected reps is that you point to pilots like Anna has, pilots like that I have, pilots that have gone on in Stockton, pilots that are going on in San Francisco, pilots that are going on in New Orleans. When you start to look and start seeing where the trend is going, this is where we're heading. So now at this point, it becomes an advantageous point for an elected official to get involved in this and not be late on it, because not only, again, are you not getting support to people who need it, but at the same time, too, if you're approaching it from a self-preservation standpoint, it is within your best interest to be ahead of this versus catching the train late. So I think that's the way that I would approach it, is that show what's going on in other cities. You can show the amount of income inequality within your community, and use that as a pitch for an investment in people. And again, the people win, the elected official wins because they're doing their job, and then they continue to keep their position. And that's what we want out of our elected officials. That's what we want out of our elected officials. And if it's not something that they would like to be a part of, I think that's where our voting power comes in, and that's how we hold them accountable and get results.
Yep. That's right. Bring the data, bring the stats, all that information. And I love that, you know, we can definitely continue to pick each other's brain in the Kumo space. I'm going to post the link to that here in the chat right now for you all. Please join us over there. I hope Anna and Sylvester can join us directly after this for a little while, and we can have a little meet and greet over there. But we'll go ahead and start saying thank you so much to both of you for being here. I just got to say, this was a wonderful session. I really, really enjoyed myself, and I enjoyed you guys and the feeling of community that it seems like you're bringing to your community and this community here in this virtual space. So thank you to our audience for attending this session. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, please do head over to the Kumo space, and we'll see you over there. There's cool art exhibits and stuff like that. And if you enjoyed this session, we've got more coming up, so please come and continue to check it out. We have amazing later today at 6 o'clock Eastern, pilots data and the drive toward cash pilots. Definitely a great follow-up conversation to attend after this one. And the link for that is coming your way. And the other thing that I would recommend is the tomorrow at 2:00 Eastern is the political champions of basic income in dialogue. That one is going to be really great. Some great speakers are going to be at that. So I hope you guys can continue to join us at the North American Basic Income Guarantee Congress this year. It's been really amazing. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sylvester. Any closing words for the audience today?
Anna?
Thanks for being here. And, you know, like, I think the point of this was to empower people to do it on their own, you know? Sylvester and I are not, I mean, maybe he is like superheroes. I'm not a superhero. It's like, you can do this.
You're my superheroes.
we all got that. We all got that in us. And, you know, I'll go back to one of my favorite quotes. I am who I am because somebody loved me. So, you know, the love that's in me acknowledges the love that's in all of you. And I think that if we continue to invest in each other and continue to love each other, pilots like this can grow. We can make some change in our world, and we can, you know, really create a society that prioritizes the needs of people over anything else. So love y'all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Anna and Sylvester, and we'll see you guys over at Kumo Space and at the rest of the conference.